now we move to the final item on the open agenda, which is item 24, the Water Supply Improvement Programme. So, Helen, welcome to the table. I know that you've got some comments that you want to share on this report before we ask you some questions, so I'll hand this over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. This report provides an update on progress, as usual, and for the first time provides a snapshot of where we expect to be in May, which is the 12-month deadline, and in October, which is the beginning of the ramp-up of supply for the next summer. So the context here is that our peak daily demand is quite different in the summer than it is in the winter. In the winter time, we'd only need 35, 36 pump stations to meet that peak daily demand, but in the summer, we need all 53 and just about every well to keep up pressures in the system and keep up with the demand. In terms of a question that's been asked by a large number of media outlets and by a large part of the population is why haven't we got to 100% chlorine free by the end of May? There are a number of issues. First of all, it was always a tough ask, so there was a lot of work to be done in a very short time. The second point to note is that while we expected to slow down in terms of the works that we could do over the summer, that has proven to be quite difficult. So we've had a very long dry period this summer. And while the water conservation campaign has been reasonably effective in terms of the average daily use, that peak daily demand has still gone very high on a large number of days. And people will have noticed that what we've had to do is bring isolated wells back into service and turn the chlorine back on around the city at a number of pump stations where we'd previously had it off. So that has been a challenge for us. The third aspect is that you will recall that last year we proposed to Council to do some interim improvements on up to 42 below ground wells. We have tested those wells and looked at where that is technically feasible, and there are only 15 or 16 where we've got both adequate artesian pressure and the ability to do cost-effective below-ground interim improvements. So that has slowed down the program, and that it's put more wells back in the full upgrade works. And finally, the ultraviolet treatment at main pumps, which we'd hoped to have on by the end of May. The contractor is projecting that by the end of June. We are working with that contractor to see if there's anything we can do to bring that forwards, but at this point it's still sitting in June 2019. So in terms of where we're at, we've got 39 wells secure, but we've got another 48 that are either in construction or design completed and awarded by tender and waiting to get on the site. And the challenge there is that we can only have 1 or 2 wells off in each zone, given the summer demand. And that's what's led to the recommendation for water restrictions across the city. So that's a step up from the voluntary water conservation campaign. And what we are proposing is that we have water restrictions from March through to May. In terms of water restrictions, it's all about the gardens and outside watering. So there's no sense of stopping people drinking what they like, and nor is there a real issue in terms of household use. So doing the laundry, washing the dishes, and taking showers is not an issue. It's that outside use. It's watering the gardens, it's sprinklers and irrigation systems. So level 1 water restrictions, you'll recall, have hoses, sprinklers and irrigation systems are all allowed but on alternate days. Level 2, we bring that back to handheld hoses only, but we allow them every day. Level 3, which is where we're wanting to go, is handheld hoses only on alternate days. Level 4, which we don't think we require, is no water outside the house, so no water use at all outside the house. And just a reminder, although I'm sure all councillors are well aware of this, it's not about insufficient water. It's about taking wells and pump stations offline. It's about being able to work on our infrastructure. And I should note that we are doing all we can to minimise council use of water, and you will have seen that some of our parks and reserves are looking quite brown. Where we have to use the water to keep playing services surfaces available for sports, we are continuing to water those ones, and where we have to keep particular collections of plants, such as in the botanic gardens, watered and alive, we are using water, but we are trying to not use water wherever we don't have to use it in our parks and gardens. The other thing that we're doing is that we've brought extra crews in to deal to leaks that are being reported to us. So we don't want any leaks out of our potable water supply system, and we've got some extra crews in town to deal with the all of the people who are thankfully using Snapsend Solve and telling us where those leaks are so we can get to them and fix them. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Pauline.
Thanks, Helen. So just on the level 3 restrictions, what are the instructions for people? How do they know which day they are?
So level 3 restrictions are alternate day watering. So if you live at number 1 or number 3, you can water on the 1st and the 3rd. So if you live at an odd numbered house, you can water on odd numbered days, and if you live at an even numbered house, you can water on even numbered days.
Right, so how will people get that message?
That message will go out and it's on our website. So that'll be well publicised.
And regarding our parks, our big parks, do they have their own bores and they don't use our reticulation network?
Yeah, quite a number of our parks do have their own bores, and so they are not impacting on the town supply and not impacting on our infrastructure. Yeah. And that's also true for some privately operated bores within parks and sports fields.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, it's all about the reticulation network coming from the pump stations, which come from the wells. So anything that doesn't come from that is actually not going to affect the water improvement program.
That's correct.
There is a bit of confusion out there with people. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Mike.
Thank you. I just want to get a couple of things clear, because the first resolution obviously is about the fact that we will not be chlorine free until October 2019, 100%. And obviously the original resolution that we made at the start of 2018 was that we'd put a 12-month limit on that, which technically expires in May 2019. So do you see this resolution as actually the council giving permission to basically rescind that override that last resolution that we did?
No, staff would need to come back to council and have a resolution to continue chlorine treatment beyond May. So we're not at that point yet. So we've still got some options to try and accelerate the program. And so what we're doing now is projecting where the program is today, okay, and we're still exploring options to accelerate it. Water restrictions would assist with that.
So when do you think we will be at in a better space to actually know if we're going to go beyond May with chlorination to certain areas of the city?
Certainly by April.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. Anne, and then I've got Jimmy and Tim. Anne.
When was that survey done in 2018? You know, where you got the positive response from people saying yes, they'd really be supportive of.
From recollection, it was around June or July,
2018.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. And I read in the report that it's possible that the Director General of Health would direct further actions such as comprehensive chlorine treatment, including maintaining a chlorine residual throughout the reticulation until the water safety plan for the city supply has been reviewed and updated in accordance with the new framework. Can you explain what that means? I was a bit unsure.
So at present, the council has implemented the temporary chlorination program. Yep. And what we're doing is removing that chlorine from a pump station as all of the wells have been signed off as secure. Yep. And that's the council's approach, and the drinking water assessor has been agreeing with that approach. Yep. If the council voted to remove the chlorine at some date, regardless of whether or not the wells were secure, then the door is open to the Medical Officer of Health and the Director General to direct the council to do something else in terms of ensuring the security of its supply. Right. And I think it's because the Ministry of Health has also released a new framework for water safety plans, and we are reviewing our water safety plan in the context of that new framework, I think there's a possibility that the Director General could make a broader direction than simply about the wellheads.
Right. So are you saying that if we decide not to continue with the chlorination because we don't want to put water restrictions on, there is a risk that the Director General of Health could say to us, well, some of your water, your wellheads are not secure, therefore the whole system is not secure, therefore you will put chlorine back into everything?
Well, some of the wellheads are not secure and you are reviewing your water safety plan. I want to see the results of all of that.
Okay. So there is a risk. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. So, Jimmy.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The water conservation campaign and also the water restriction, these two kind of crucial conditions to make council the target can be achieved. First target in May of this coming year. Second target probably in October of this year. Particular from now on March to the May, the water conservation the campaign. I'm concerned here you particularly mentioned would like to put on the social media and local community newspaper, am I right?
Yes.
But our city or community is multi-ethnic community. Whether you have considered to engage with local multi-ethnic newspaper or media,
we can certainly look at that.
Can make this more kind of effective. I suggest this one. Second one, regarding to the water restriction, because my understanding, this is not a enforcement. It's not a kind of compulsory. It's nice to have. But if nice to have, do we have any kind of incentive scheme? For instance, if you committed to have water conservation, we give you the certificate to recognize your, to comply with the council this campaign. This I suggest, whether group one or individual one.
So certainly we can look at other opportunities to publicise the message, and thank you, we can do that. In terms of incentives, our experience and the experience of other towns and cities that put in place water restrictions is that most people comply and there's no need for incentives. And certainly post-earthquakes in Christchurch, which was the last time we had water restrictions, most people complied. And in the Banks Peninsula towns where they often have summer water restrictions, most people comply and you see a significant reduction in demand.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tim and then David. Tim.
Thank you. I guess the crux of the matter is that we've been given a very, look, firstly, thank you for always using the term temporary chlorination, because that's exactly what it is. And the crux of the matter is we've been given a very clear feedback from our ratepayers, our residents, that they do not want chlorination. So to put in the restrictions is going to allow this council to get rid of the chlorination soon. That's the bottom line, isn't it?
Yes, in two senses. So first of all, putting in the restrictions and reducing the demand will enable us to provide more water without chlorine today, because we can isolate some wells and use those pump stations without chlorine. And secondly, it will enable us, it'll give us more room to move. So more room to bring more wells into the construction phase and get the chlorine out faster in a more permanent sense.
And if we vote against the water restrictions today, as mentioned in the paper, suburbs like Beckenham, Cashmere, etc., will be the last ones on the list to be chlorine-free.
Yes, and I don't want to pick on just two suburbs,
well,
but the central zone and the southern part of the central zone is the most affected, yes. So main pump station, of course, is located in Beckenham and feeds the hill suburbs as well. So it's Beckenham, Opawa, parts of Spraydon, Somerville. It's quite a wide area at that southern part of the city and then up the hills.
Cool, thank you.
David.
Thank you.
firstly, can I just acknowledge the complexity of the problems you're dealing with, and express thanks to the staff for the, I'm sure, strong efforts they are going to get ourselves chlorine free. One of the issues or questions that I get frequently asked is, you know, when will we, or what wells are coming on or off or whatever. And for me it would be particularly helpful, and I wonder whether you could put out some mappings that show when you expect chlorine to be removed from certain areas or catchments, and where wells might be shut down to help with the restoration process, and the latter being, you know, quite important. I think if people can see that these particular wells need to be shut down to accelerate the repair process, I think it would give some sort of impetus to the conservation campaign, if you could say, well, for example, in my area, if it was the Effingham Street well that was going to be shut down and we were going to rely on Keys Road to feed most of our area, then people would know, well, they're shutting that one down and it can be repaired. It's an impetus to conserve water. So I'd really like to just see some sort of...
Is this leading to a question?
I've asked her, can we produce some data mapping well locations and expectations of when particular areas may be complete and chlorine free, and areas where there might be issues that are going to continue a little longer.
Now that is an excellent and well-timed question, because just today we've updated the map online. So the mapping online shows the chlorine by pump station, and it shows which ones have 0, which ones have half a part per million, and which ones are still at the higher dose of 1 part per million. But if you click on the map, it now tells you the date. It'll tell you first of all whether or not the works are completed, if they're completed, and then if there are works still in line, it'll tell you the estimated start date for construction and the estimated completion date. So we've just loaded that this week. So that map, it's the same map that we've had to show the chlorine levels across the city, but now it shows the future program. And the other thing that we're doing, this is quite an agile program, as you will have noted, that we change the schedule every week. So we will be updating that map every week. So something that was, you know, programmed to begin in April and finish in, say, May, if we change the program, we will change that map. And we are rescheduling weekly to try and accelerate the program and get the most work done in the time available.
Thank you. So still in questions, I've got Yanni, Pauline and Vicky. Yanni.
Yeah, I mean, I think the map has I've just looked at it, but it'd be quite good to get a matrix so you could actually see like what the different work packages was. Like in our report previously we've had a matrix that show it, but now we've just got reference to, you know, the work packages without seeing the wells in each one. So just thinking about that, I think it's great that we've finally put in some non-chlorinated filling stations, or at least one that's operational. But the areas where we're chlorinating and we're doing the work, is there any opportunity to do a filling station there? I mean, because I'm trying to look on the map and see which well is going to be done next to get this chlorine removed, but you can't. It's not very easy to tell from the information we've got.
So yes, we've got one filling station at the Keys pump station, and we have another one that will go in at the Burnside pump station. We are looking at other opportunities, but we haven't identified another one yet. We've identified several options and eliminated them, and generally it's around good access, good parking, adequate visibility and security. So those are the things that we're looking at to try and find these filling stations. But yes, we will continue to look at those.
Would it? I mean, how do we give feedback around that? like, how do we, at a governance level, get any sort of direction, set the direction, or give any feedback around that?
So we are trying to look at filling station locations to service people across the whole city. I'm not sure what other sort of direction that you would.
We're now nearly in March. We've got April and May, and then the chlorine's out.
That's correct.
So, I mean, we don't have much time, and we could spend a lot of money putting in filling stations and we're going to remove the chlorine anyway. So
no, we're looking at cost effectiveness as well. So if it's a ridiculous price to put a filling station in, we will not do it. Okay. So it's only where it's relatively straightforward to put them in, and that we can easily tap into the feed from the pump station. Yeah. Okay. So like Woolston seems to be one that we're currently doing the work. We're going to get it open in April. Could the chlorine be removed then from Woolston, and could we put a filling station in Woolston, where we've just got the new community centre and the big... Sorry, I'm not sure if we've looked at Woolston, but I can have a look at that one and come back to you. Right. I think that would be quite useful. And I just wanted to check the whole new water safety plan. Can you just give us some sense of what discussions are being had around that with central government? And I mean, you've talked about us having to update it and reviewing it, and we're going to have it done by July 2019. But is there any sense of we're going to be required to do a whole bunch of extra work because of that plan, or is the work that we're currently doing sufficient? In December 2018, the Ministry of Health released a new framework for water safety plans. So all water safety plans that are reviewed since that date will comply with the new framework, and we've got 5 or 6 on Banks Peninsula that we will be doing. And in discussions with the Ministry of Health, we've also agreed that while the one for Christchurch City is not due, it would be a good one to also review because it's a major urban supply. The benefit for us is that we will have a compliant, approved water safety plan against the new framework and a better understanding of that new framework. The benefit for the Ministry of Health is that they wish to be a part of the workshops and test drive their new framework, if you like, and also update their guidance for putting these water safety plans in place. Yeah. In terms of the question about will it entail more investment from the council, we won't know the answer to that until we've gone through the process of identifying the risks and assessing them against the new risk matrix. Right. So what I'm concerned about is that we spend all this money, we get the pump stations upgraded, fixed, UV put in place, and then we're bringing forward the water safety plan from 2023 to 2019, and we get to a situation where basically it doesn't get signed off and we're told we have to keep chlorinating because we haven't met X, Y, Z. So why would we bring it forward if we've got that risk? So the Director General of Health can direct us to bring it forward, even if we don't do so voluntarily. And in discussions with the Ministry of Health, we think a much better approach is to work collaboratively on the new plan and understand that new framework and do it now. Right, even if it means the risk is that we have to keep chlorinating for a lot longer. That's a possible risk, but that risk doesn't go away if the Director General makes a direction to us to update the plan. Right, but that hasn't been discussed or hinted at? Yes. It has been? That has been discussed. That was discussed in December last year. And it was hinted at that they would direct us to do it if we didn't choose to do it? Yes. Wow. Thank you. So Pauline and Vicky, and then Mike, were you signalling something further? Yep, so Pauline, Vicky, and then Mike. Pauline. Just
touch on the water safety plan as well. Is there any way we can get that done earlier than July 2019?
No, we want to do a thorough job, and we want to do the workshops with the Medical Officer of Health, the Drinking Water Assessor, and the officials from the Ministry of Health. Yeah. And we want to make sure that we've done a thorough research of what the issues are and all of the options for mitigating those, and we don't want to be hurried with that. Even that 6 months is a pretty tight time frame to do that work. Remembering that we've got 5 others that we're doing in parallel as well on Banks Peninsula. So there are 5 small supplies on Banks Peninsula that are due April, May, July, September, I think. I'm looking across at John Moore, and he's nodding.
So even if we did advance the UV program into May, it wouldn't help us get chlorine out because we won't get it out until we've done updated our water safety plan.
No, that's not so. So as soon as that UV plant is commissioned at main pumps and operating satisfactorily, we will turn the chlorine off at main pumps. Okay, and that's a large part of the city supply. So the update of the water safety plan is happening in parallel. Great. So just looking at number 1 there, you're still optimistic that we can find some ways to accelerate the work. You've put October there, probably as a conservative date. I'm wondering if we could change the word October to spring, please. Certainly. Well, spring is September, October, but whatever. But it just looks better to me, and I think I'd feel more comfortable with that. So, in terms of the current program, those other 2 pump stations are due to be completed in July and September. Yep. If we go to program. So, putting spring doesn't actually put a firm, like saying October is quite scary. It may happen earlier. It just gives us that comfort that it could be earlier. Yeah, the only reason October is there is that we did a snapshot of where we'd be in October in preparation for summer demand.
Or could we achieve the same thing by saying no later than October?
I still prefer spring. I think we should talk seasonally. But anyway, the principle is that we are optimistic that we may be able to bring that forward, that date earlier, so I don't see why we have to have October in there.
So are you indicating that you would move this resolution with the word October taken out and the word spring put in instead?
Yes.
Okay.
If the committee's
you can do that.
Council's happy with that.
It's literally semantics, isn't it, though?
Yeah.
All right, so Pauline, you're indicating you'll move that in that way. That's fine. Coming back to questions, Vicky, and then back to Mike. Vicky.
Thank you. So can I just make sure I've got this right? So there's of 8 of the 9 water supply zones, they'll be done by May 2019.
We're reasonably confident of that. That's
okay,
correct.
So that's excellent. And that's 58% of the city's water supply?
By May, we should have 90% of the city's water supply. So your 58% is about 8 of the 9 water supply zones supply 58% of the population.
Yeah.
When I say 90% of the water supply, that's 90% by volume of the water delivered will be without chlorine. So within that central zone, there are 15 pump stations.
Right.
Probably 9 or 10 of them operating in May, and 3 of them with chlorine. So, doing the sums quickly, that's about 25% of the water in the central zone will still have chlorine.
Right, and that's so 25% of the 42% will still have chlorine. So your 90%
that's correct.
Without chlorine is correct.
Yes.
Okay, so because it doesn't quite read that way. So by May, you're expecting that 90% of Christchurch's water does not have chlorine in it.
That's correct. Of
Brilliant.
The water delivered into the reticulation.
Okay, and then so the last one on this schedule is September 19. And you're looking at trying to bring that forward, if possible?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
That's the challenge of we review it every fortnight. We review the schedule every fortnight.
Okay. And that comes back to us in April. Right. So by May this year, the end of May, 90% of Christchurch's water doesn't have chlorine. Is there any risk from the government's meddling in the 3 waters and the rules that they're about to institute or suggest in June around waters? And have we told all of those government ministers that we're that far along the way towards removing chlorine?
So the Ministry of Health are reviewing the regulations for water supply, as we all know. And they're doing that, they've got 2 streams of work. One is reviewing the current regulations and improving them, and the new framework for water safety plans is a part of that, new requirements for monitoring coliform and enumerating results for E. coli is a part of that. So there's ongoing update of the present regulations. We are quite confident we can comply with all of that. The other part of it is new regulations.
Yeah, the post-Havelock
The
stuff.
progress with the new regulations appears to be that they would have in place the institutional arrangements for the new regulations and overseeing those, but I doubt that we would see draft regulations coming out in June. So I think that program would be a little bit longer, and also the amendments to the Public Health Drinking Water Amendment Acts that are in at the moment do say that any changes to the drinking water standards would come with adequate consultation with community water suppliers. So that is essentially local government and some other suppliers.
So they may have a framework in place by June. My concern is that we haven't got all the chlorine out by the time that the government acts, and pardon me, and then the government acts just strictly on the Havelock North thing without any awareness or knowledge of how important this is in Christchurch, and doesn't do the sort of risk-based approach.
So my understanding from speaking with the Ministry of Health officials and speaking with officials from Department of Internal Affairs is that they have a very good understanding of what is going on in Christchurch.
Okay.
So and are watching what we are doing down here with quite some interest.
But we didn't get that from the other day.
That's because officials are different than the MPs.
So there has been some additional correspondence go from the Mayor's office to the ministers, and that did have a summary of the work that's being done down here with a summary of progress.
So any sort of change in rules from central government would require them actively putting chlorine back in, which the council would probably say no to.
There would need to be adequate consultation with local government before
but we'll have
such changes to the drinking water standards came through.
We'll have it all out by the time that happens.
I would expect
if
so,
it
yes.
happens. Yeah. Okay, thanks very much.
All right, thank you. Mike, back to you.
Thank you. Just a few more questions. I just want to, I guess, look at, there's three obviously pump stations that have been identified that may go past May, and one of them is the Mays one. And so I just want a quick chat about that. So obviously there's 3 wells in there, and the work is to raise 2 wellheads and replace one. So obviously I assume the replacing the one well is the biggest amount of work that needs to be done in terms of time?
Yes, so at the moment the raising of the 2 wellheads is due in July 2019, and the replacement of the well is not due until December.
Oh, okay.
So the replacements, yes, do take a lot longer.
Okay. And would restrictions, if they worked, actually speed up that work, or?
It could speed up the raising of the wellheads, yes. Probably not the replacement well, but we wouldn't do that.
Could get away with just having 2.
Yes.
So my other question, I guess, is around, if we get to the point in May and there's only 10% left to go, would it be possible, therefore, to remove the chlorine and actually put a boil water notice on those remaining residents that may still have a very, very tiny chance of contamination?
No, it wouldn't, because you'd have to put the boil water notice on the whole of the central zone, because the water can travel across the network within that zone.
But you still could do that then?
You could put a boil water
option?
notice on the central zone, yes.
So if
however, that comes with its own risks in terms of the imposition on the householder and the risk of whether or not they would comply.
Becomes a choice, doesn't it, instead of something being forced on them currently?
Yes, it does.
So I guess yes, there is a chance that it may get sped up and all the chlorine is removed by May. I don't see that actually happening by what's been said. Would it not therefore be wise to actually therefore consult with our communities and see if they'd actually, the central zone, and say these are the options available? We could continue chlorination until spring, or we could actually place a boil water notice on you until all the work's done.
We could look at doing that if council was of a mind to make a resolution around that. But I think John's on his feet. Come to the table, John. I think he's going to talk to you about boil water notices and what the triggers are.
Oh no, I wasn't going to talk about that, but I'm I'm just going to express some concern that if we were to put a boiled water notice on, it might trigger the Director General to ask us to put chlorine in on the basis that he might feel that there would be lack of compliance in the community. That's all I was going to say.
Have we asked that question?
No.
Well, sort of yes and no. We have talked with the drinking water assessor about putting in some additional risk mitigation around contamination of well heads that would enable us to turn the chlorine off even though they technically weren't secure, and she has been very clear with a no to that. So we have looked at alternative risk mitigation methods, and none of those have passed scrutiny.
Yeah, I guess for me, there's a matter of timing at the moment, so it may come around pretty quickly. And we're not talking actually about the whole city now. We're starting to get to a really defined area, and therefore I think it's an opportunity, if we're going to go past May, to actually do the right thing and consult with the people. We could therefore get a much different sense from them that actually they might be happy with a boil water notice, and it's something we could put forward. We may get slapped down, but if we don't ask the question, we'll never know.
All right, thank you. So remaining questions, I've got Anne and then Yanni, back to you. And Aaron, we really need to pick up the pace here because we've got DCL waiting for the public excluded section as well.
Thanks, Helen. Helen, you're great at being able to explain things so clearly. Thanks for your patience too. Just wondering, in terms of availability of staff, of expertise really in this discussion, is there a risk that in terms of timing that there may not be the staff available that we need?
No, I think John would agree that we have a fabulous team available and we have the expertise available.
Right.
At the moment, it's getting the physical works on the ground at the wells and getting the wells off the network that's holding us up.
Right. So it's all set to go. Just got to get rid of the water.
There's 40 odd wells sitting there waiting for us.
So just lower the demand and you can get started. Yeah. Okay.
All right, thank you. So Yanni, you're good. Aaron.
So yeah, Helen, it's just, I realise for messaging it's a lot easier to tell everyone just to use less water, but with some areas that are completely out of the mix, so to speak, the restrictions then turning off the water doesn't affect the overall program. So what do we say to them?
So you're alluding to the fact that in the northwest zone and probably also in the Rāwhiti zone out east, most of the wells are in good shape.
Yep.
However, we do have works underway in both of those zones, and so we still have some challenges in those zones. And the other challenge for, particularly for the northwest, is that when the demand goes up, we do have to bring some of those isolated wells back on, and people in the northwest will have noticed through January and February that they have got more chlorine than they had in November and December, for example. So as the demand has risen out there, and we have continued the works, we've had to bring some of those isolated wells back and turn the chlorine back on.
Right, so the clear answer is if we don't all go in, you then start having to pull from one part to another, which may mean that they end up getting chlorinated when they're not, just because they started watering.
That's correct.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so this is moved by Pauline, seconded by Tim. Great. Is there any debate on this? Mike?
Just want to move an amendment. Consult with the residents of the central zone on options if continued chlorination will pass May 2019.
So if we can get the wording for that amendment put up, we'll deal with the amendment first. And just a question on that, if I can. What would be the cost of such a consultation, and how long would it take?
A question came quickly to mind was, could we do it by a survey So we did use a survey last year across the whole city rather than a consultation procedure. So we didn't carry out any workshops or stand in malls, we simply did a telephone survey. And if a telephone survey would suffice, then I think the costs of that were around 25,000.
Yeah, that's in the order.
Yes. It would be slightly smaller because it would be in the central zone, but of that order.
Can we just be clear? Are you consulting with everybody in the central zone?
Well, I would prefer just to consult with the people directly affected with additional chlorination, but I've been told that actually it could spread out through the whole of the central zone. So technically everyone in the central zone will have potentially chlorination post-May. And I just think there's an opportunity. We didn't do it at the start because we were limited with time, and I think we should have. But now we've got an opportunity to actually, we put a deadline on the city of May 2019. It looks like we're going to go past that for a group of residents. We've actually got an opportunity to talk to those residents and ask them their opinion.
So can I just be clear, because on our own website we've got 90% of the city's water delivered without chlorine disinfection by the end of May, and then 95% by the end of June. So you're dealing with 5% of the population.
Well, no, not quite,
Are
because
not
of the
important?
mixing of the water.
I understand that. That's why I'm.
And so those 5% therefore are not important?
No, I'm not saying that.
Okay, so let's not have a debate across the
I'm
table.
trying to understand what you're actually seeking to do. Yeah.
I just want to have a conversation with the people that are going to be affected past May 2019.
So what are you going to consult?
All right, let's not have a conversation across the table. Yeah. Let's ask questions of staff and then let's have a debate. So is this the correct wording, Mike, for the amendment that you want to put?
Yes.
Consult with the public in the central zone on options if continued chlorination will pass May 2019. Question for...
sorry. One of the things I'd like to see, and obviously it needs to be something that's going to be asked if it was developed and passed, would be if the water could actually just have a boil water notice on it, therefore giving the people the choice to actually do it.
Because that's the signal that we are in trouble.
All right, Mr. Chair, does this have a seconder?
We haven't tested that yet. We're just getting the wording right at the moment. Dion, you'll second it. All right, so it does have a seconder. Question for staff. If this amendment were to be successful, and if the public were to say we want a boil water notice, we don't want chlorination, what would the likely reaction of the health people be to that? I mean, would we be told that we had to continue chlorinating anyway?
I can't say what their reaction would be, but I'm sure that they would be very concerned.
Because, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is there a danger that we would, if this were to be successful, would we go through this process and could we end up in the same place as we were if we didn't do it anyway?
I believe so.
Thank you.
And a further comment in putting the consultation directly related to boiled water might raise an expectation if the council then chose not to go ahead with that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, so we've got this amendment in front of us. It's been moved and seconded. Mike, I'm assuming that you want to speak to this.
Well, I've probably said enough. I'll just add that obviously we all want the chlorination out. And yes, 90% of the people will be chlorine-free by May. But there is a percentage of people in Christchurch that are going to be affected with continued chlorination of their water. Simply going out to consult and actually asking the people that are affected what their opinion is actually the right thing to do. It should have happened before we chlorinated the water the first time, and now we have got the opportunity to do it. I don't know why we would say no to that opportunity. It's simply presenting them with a couple of options. One of those options could be to continue chlorinating the water. The other one could be a boil water notice.
I'm concerned that we might be raising expectations that there is an alternative to chlorination when there may not be. I'm concerned that by giving people a choice, they think they've got some influence over the outcome when they may not be. And I would like to see the organisation's energy going into getting the chlorine out of the water as quickly as possible, rather than into a consultation that may in fact have no effect on anything, regardless of what the people say, because of the environment in which we're working. Tim and then Dion.
Thank you. As the councillor who's 10% is going to, or is the most affected of the 10%, I prefer to see us, and I think the message has been very clear by the people of Christchurch. We do not want chlorination in our water, so let's do this. Let's get to the point where we can get rid of all of the chlorination, full stop. Because until this moment, I thought we were one team working together, but suddenly it may be that there's one community that's going to be chlorinated a lot longer than others, while others are fine.
Okay, so we're just dealing with the amendment at the moment. Dion and then Anne. Dion.
The amendment.
You are the seconder to an amendment, and you're indicating you want to speak to it.
Yeah, no, I've just turned my brain cell back on. The reason that I supported this is I agree with what Mike is saying. I think, you know, at the time that we made this decision, we made it in a bit of duress, and we're making this decision today. The decision I made back then was to temporarily chlorinate for 12 months. And we're seeing that the ball game is slightly changing now, and I think we actually should have a conversation with our communities about that. I don't personally want to be held with this veil of, you know, the health person saying we will do this. If we take it out and we say what we said we were going to do, and then the health officials say, actually, you haven't done this, you need to chlorinate, then that's what they're going to say to us. But I want to have a conversation with the communities if the ball game is changing.
All right, so continuing to deal with the amendment, Anne, Phil, Yarni. Anne.
I'm feeling really concerned that we could be in a position where we are asking a small percentage of the community to make a decision that will actually affect the rest of the city. Because if they say that they do not want to continue with the chlorination, then that means the whole of the city is affected basically because of the doubt that that casts on the fantastic work that has been done to this point. So I'm a bit bewildered by this.
Phil?
I actually am concerned that it's sort of like a decision around consultation is being made on the hoof by council/committee with no clear sort of desired outcomes at all. To me, this is an example of, unfortunately, where the scrum's being screwed, and in fact we're losing sight of the main objective of the game. And I'm very concerned actually that we even have it. So I'm certainly going to be voting against it.
Yarni.
Cool. Yeah, I think this is such an important issue, and our community actually do, I think, have a right to have a say. And we were told when we made the decision to put the chlorination in, we had options. We had options not to do it, and we would be forced to do it by the medical officer of health. And one of the things that convinced me that that was the right call at the time, which is a point that the mayor has made, and you know, she's not here to repeat that today, but she said to us repeatedly on a number of occasions when we've discussed the water supply that it would be our choice when we could remove the chlorination. And so I can't see why we wouldn't talk to our community if we're going to go past the date that we set to stopping it. I think it actually makes sense. The central zone is actually a huge zone. It's not just a small group of people, it's actually the major zone within our city. I come back to, you know, in terms of the future of water supply, we need to get smaller supply zones, and I know that work is about to start, or there's been reports written about it, but you know, this is the silliness of having these huge massive zones where you have to chlorinate across it all because you've got a few pumps that haven't been fixed. So I see no problem with engaging our community. I think it's sensible given that we made a commitment to remove it within a certain time frame, and if we're not going to meet that time frame, let's talk to them.
Okay, so Vicky, Aaron and now Pauline. Vicky.
I think this is just ridiculous. This came up at the Infrastructure Committee. It was defeated at the Infrastructure Committee. We're now debating it again. The idea that part of Christchurch would have a boiled water notice is just so sort of 1930s that you don't even want to contemplate that. It also is going to confuse everybody in Christchurch. So you're going to consult with some people in Christchurch on whether some people in Christchurch should have a boiled water notice, or we work fast to get the chlorination out, which would be out of their water within the 2 months anyway. One of the reasons that we agreed to doing the chlorination was because the medical officer of health was going to tell us to do this anyway, and then he was going to be in charge of the timetable. And our difficulty of getting that out would have been more difficult. So as we now face the government dealing with a whole lot of recommendations from Havelock North, which mean we have to be so on our toes to make sure that we as a city can continue to have unchlorinated water long term, the last thing we want to do is have in Christchurch even the possibility of boiled water notices. That sounds like a remote rural part of Selwyn district, not a really leading edge city. It's not something we want to even contemplate, and we destroy all credibility that we have built up over the last 12 to 14 months with the Ministry of Health and with the Medical Officer of Health, who we so need to keep on side so that we can continue to have pure unchlorinated water for Christchurch. I can't think of a much more silly thing to do, actually, just in terms of destroying all the good work that's been done. I will be voting against it.
Aaron and then Pauline.
Yeah, I will actually support Mike on this. And I sit on the health board as well, so I got to receive the information and have extra meetings before, and saw the letter from the DG and knew why the situation was coming, and it all goes back to Havelock North. What we should have done right at the start of this was ask the people of Christchurch, because I think the people of Christchurch would have put a flag in the sand and said, you know what, we are willing to take the risk. Our water is no different than it was the day before Havelock North happened, and we've got fantastic water here. We've had great staff looking after it. Yes, we needed some upgrades. The upgrades have been done, but I will say this: if the Medical Officer of Health had been concerned about our water, he would have issued a boil water notice for the 2 to 3 month lag there was from the time that the letter came through, and I just put in brackets, a letter came through telling people to be careful, and from that point through to the point we were chlorinating, if he believed there was an imminent risk, because it would have been on his head if something had gone wrong. He did not issue the boil water notice because there was no imminent risk.
Thank you. And Pauline.
We've had a lot of changes since then, Aaron, a lot of updated reports and findings from the Havelock North Stage 1 and Stage 2 reports that have added to that information. But do not support this amendment. I totally agree with everything Vicky said. And one of the reasons this water improvement project is doing so well is that the relationship that Helen and her team have built with the drinking water assessors and all the officials in that area is exemplary. They're taking them on the journey with them, being totally transparent. You've even had them visit town and talk about everything that we're doing. I agree, this would totally undermine that. It would come at them from left field. It would be incredibly damaging to our ultimate goal of removing that chlorine as quickly as we can. If we don't make the May deadline, we will have to handle that reaction from the people of Christchurch. We are doing our very best. The team is doing their best. I do not want this program undermined. Do not support the amendment. I will not.
Okay, so I'll put a vote regarding this amendment. So I'll put the amendment. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. No. So can we have the noes raise their hands, please? So those who voted against, yep. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I counted. Did I count myself? Well, can we record it by way of division, please, and then it's clear. Thank you. Yep. Thank you.
So for the amendment, Councillor Johansson?
Yes.
Councillor Swiggs?
Yes.
Councillor Manji?
No.
Councillor Keown?
Yes.
Councillor Galloway? No. Councillor Chen?
No.
Councillor Davidson?
Yes.
Councillor Potter?
No.
Councillor Turner?
No.
Councillor Scundrip?
No.
Councillor Goff?
No.
Councillor Book?
No.
Oh, is this for or against? Oh, yeah.
No. Shall I be more clear?
No means no.
Councillor Livingston isn't here.
He's not
Councillor
here.
East?
No.
And Councillor Clearwater?
No.
So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 for no.
Okay, so that amendment failed, is lost. So now we're back to the substantive motion. So are people wanting to speak to the substantive motion? Okay, move that it be put, that's fine. So let's just put this motion so that we can move on. So all those in favour say aye. 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 Against? That's carried. Thank you.
I'm going to vote against. Well, that's already done. It's already done now.
So we'll note your vote against too. All right, that's fine. So that's the brings us to the